I know. Another Wes Anderson video essay where the person tries to be original. There are countless videos on his film style, his visual symmetry, and colour hues. I'm going to try my hardest not to solely focus on these aspects, and hopefully show you a different perspective, his perspective, and why his films, which are rooted in childhood nostalgia, leave so many people with a love for this director. But first, let's briefly sum up Anderson's style. Anderson is known for being one of the most direct directors in cinema today. This is how he creates his simultaneously idiosyncratic and relentlessly detailed films. Laced throughout all his films are several production design elements and visual gags, but executed in such a deliberate manner that the viewer always catches these little Easter eggs that informs us more about the story. Other directors will often keep you in suspense by holding information back and strategically distributing details. This is because it has been said that Wes Anderson likes to control as many aspects of the film as possible, so that he allows the audience to know what he wants them to know, see what he wants them to see, feel what he wants them to feel. Let's say he's a bit of a control freak. The overall Wes Anderson aesthetic is thoughtfully charming through his unique blocking, staging, writing, and performances. Wes Anderson is said to have a childlike perspective on the world. This may be due to a lot of his ideas and characters coming from his childhood. For example, Rushmore is a combination of Wes Anderson and longtime friend and actor Owen Wilson's time at high school. Anderson likes to make his films feel as authentic as possible, so he actually filmed Rushmore in his real school and classroom that he attended. Also, the plays in the film are based on the real plays that he created in high school. This authentic style of filming is something Anderson strives for in many of his films. Many of his sets are real places in the world and are meticulously scouted for. Another film inspired from his childhood is his newest film, The French Dispatch, that came out in 2021. This was a tribute to The New Yorker, a magazine that Wes Anderson has been a collector of and been obsessed with since he was a child. Once again, Anderson based the characters on real people that worked for the New Yorker magazine. Bill Murray's character is based off the editor Harold Ross. You can see the similarities through their looks, and it is said that their mannerisms are similar too. Wes Anderson also draws inspiration from specific articles in The New Yorker. In the second story in the film, it is almost a direct adaptation of Mavis Gallant article. The events in May, A Paris Notebook 1. The events almost match everything to a T. Also, the character is clearly modelled after Mavis Gallant herself, throughout the writing style and behaviour of the character compared to Mavis. Anderson's childlike perspective is also highlighted throughout many of his films with the dollhouse set style. Not only is this aesthetically pleasing, but it also gives the audience more information on the setting of the film. Simon Weiss, who is Anderson's model maker, explains that he could have done it CGI, but Wes wanted models. These models have become something of a trademark for Anderson. Weiss also reveals that they spent months building about 20 models for the French Dispatch, including the office sign, various cityscapes, and also a large cargo plane that splits in half to reveal a cross-section of the passengers within. The cross-section dollhouse technique is something that has been used throughout film history. We first see this effect used in Morris Turner 1916. He used this technique to avoid traditional cross-cutting techniques used to hop between storylines. Inspired by this, we see this nearly 70 years later in The High Sun 1921 by Buster Keaton to create a comical effect. It is clear that Wes has been highly inspired by this technique and is one of the main effects he uses in his films. Not only is Wes Anderson inspired by his own life and the people around him, he is also influenced by some of the best filmmakers around him, such as Stanley Kubrick, Roman Polanski, Steven Spielberg, Alfred Hitchcock, Martin Scorsese, and many more. In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, he discusses this love and inspiration for Stanley Kubrick.
Definitely Kubrick is one of my favorites. I don't usually look, usually by the time I'm making a movie, I don't really know where I'm stealing everything from. And someone says to me, I can see the thing you did here, and I'm like, oh yeah, that is where I stole that. I usually, by the time it's a movie, I think this is my thing, and I forget where I took it all. But I think I'm always pretty influenced by Kubrick, Kubrick and Polanski and John Huston and Martin Scorsese. There are guys whose way with the camera has always, or Orson Welles. These are guys who I've always felt like I'm taking something from them.
Just like Wes Anderson, when Stanley Kubrick starts making movies, he was in his own league. Many people are inspired by his filming, and now the same can be said of Wes Anderson, whose distinct artistic style is unlike any other in the current landscape of cinema. Wes Anderson is not only inspired but pays homage to Alfred Hitchcock, especially in Hitchcock's Torn Curtain made in 1966. This American political thriller is set in an Eastern European country on the brink of war. Sound familiar? This film inspired Wes Anderson's The Grand Budapest Hotel. This is where Anderson pays homage in a recreation of a scene in The Torn Curtain. However, Anderson recreated the scene with his own symmetrical style. He turns Alfred Hitchcock's angled perspective into a straight-on profile perspective. Wes Anderson also uses his style to create less cuts, and we see this in the scene on the bus, where we see the bike in the reflection of the window, rather than cutting back and forth like Alfred Hitchcock. Ahead of the release of Anderson's newest film, The French Dispatch, 2021, Anderson partnered with the French Institute Alliance Française for a screening of 7 of his favourite French movies that inspired his film, one of which was Jacques Tati's Mon Oncle, 1958. In the beginning of the film, it features an exterior dollhouse shot, which is similar to the shot in The French Dispatch, where we see the waiter carrying drinks up the stairs. Sarajevo, 1940, by Max Ophuls, was another of Wes Anderson's favourites. The French drama features the portrayal of a love affair and marriage between 2 characters. We see this in The French Dispatch between the characters Zeffirelli Juliette and Lucinda in the third story. Overall, the film pays homage to many French classics, like many other films, while delivering the expective Anderson style. Obviously, Anderson is not the only person to be inspired by other people. He inspires a numerous amount of people to this day, including the very popular animation Family Guy, who mimics the Wes Anderson style in their own comical style.
Let me tell you about my house. We lived in a New England cottage that was inside a vintage army tent, that was inside a decommissioned submarine, that was all inside an old airplane hangar.
Wes Anderson is not only responsible for making cinematic masterpieces. Over the course of his career, Anderson has also directed some of the best commercials of the 21st century for top companies like American Express, Sony, Prada, Hyundai, and AT&T. The commercials feature his unique style and storyline in a condensed, short amount of time, the most notable of which are American Express commercial 2006. In an advertisement called My Life, My Card, created for American Express, Anderson not only directs, but features in this commercial himself.
Anyway, American Express commercial. Here we go.
This is probably one of his most famous commercial works to date for that reason. The commercial also features Jason Schwartzman and Anderson's longtime cinematographer, Robert Eman. The advertisement brings the viewer right on the set of an Anderson movie to celebrate and playfully make fun of his style. Additionally, Anderson and Roman Coppola collaborated and made a stylish commercial in 2010 for the Belgian beer company Stella Artois. The futuristic commercial is immediately identifiable from the first shot. The symmetry, black compositions, dolly movements, and headshots looking down, featuring hands, are all present and accounted for. Wes also directed a commercial for Prada in 2013 called Castello Cavalcante. The film, starring Jason Schwartzman, follows the story of an unsuccessful Formula One driver who crashes his vehicle. The character stranded in a little fictional Italian village of Castello Cavalcante decides to stay for a while. Like usual, Anderson pays homage to a series of Italian films in his short, including Italian director and filmmaker Federico Fellini. But of course, Anderson puts his own twist of the combination of changing colours, panning camera, and abrupt ending. In his most recent commercial in 2016, Anderson teamed up with Adrian Brody, someone who he has worked with frequently. The Christmas-themed commercial for H&M is set on a train and features Brody as a conductor trying his best to spread holiday cheer. Trains are something that Wes Anderson uses a lot in his films and is a signature thing on his set, especially in Grand Budapest Hotel and Darjeeling Limited, both of which Adrian Brody stars in. To conclude, Wes Anderson is a man of many talents, whether it's movies, commercials, maybe we'll leave the acting out.
Can I get my snack?
You're eating it.
He is someone that makes film less serious when covering heavier themes and topics. He doesn't make it hard to follow his films by leaving us guessing and wondering what's happening. Of course, throughout all the commercials, I could go on about how he uses his style, with straight-on shots, framed compositions, to make it more Anderson, but I feel like this is something so obvious when studying Wes Anderson. Anderson is willing to delve into any style of genre, putting his twist on it, whether it's animation, adventure, melodrama, stop motion, or indie filmmaking. Most of his films don't fit into one genre exactly. He blurs the lines between genre, and some say he forges his own. Wes Anderson is inspired by the people around him, whether it's the people that he meets, that he turns into characters, the films that he watches, that he pays homage to, or even his own life events that he recreates. Anderson pulls you into a realistic world and makes you feel and care for his characters. characters. This is because, to a certain extent, it is real. His direct directing leaves nothing out, making you feel so immersed and convinced of his characters and the world. And as a consequence of this, many people love and feel that warm, homey feeling when watching his films. Just like someone is reading you a story. Inspired by his own childhood, Anderson takes you back to your own childhood.
Just try to make it sound like you wrote it that way on purpose.